Imagine being worshipped by millions, your face on every magazine, your name in every household, only to die alone, in silence, with no one even noticing. That was the cruel fate of many Golden Age stars. Behind the glamour and flashing lights was a brutal system that chewed people up and tossed them aside. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the shocking final days of 30 legendary icons, forgotten not by accident, but by design. These aren't just tragic endings. They're a haunting reminder of how quickly Hollywood can turn its back on those who gave it everything. Barbara Payton, the bad girl Hollywood abandoned. Barbara Payton had it all: beauty, charisma, and roles alongside Hollywood's biggest stars. But behind the camera, scandal followed her like a shadow. Affairs, arrests, and addiction turned her into tabloid gold and studio poison. As offers vanished, so did her stability. She ended up on the streets, trading glamour for survival. By 39, she was gone. Heart and liver failure claimed her in a run-down apartment. The woman who once lit up the screen died penniless, nameless, and completely alone. Jean Harlow, pressured to death. Jean Harlow was Hollywood's original platinum blonde, a dazzling icon of 1930s cinema. But behind the studio-engineered perfection, she was silently suffering. Kidney disease ravaged her body, yet MGM kept her working, ignoring the warning signs. Driven by contracts and expectations, she pushed through unbearable pain until her body gave out. At just 26, she died in her mother's arms, but her battle had been fought alone. The industry mourned publicly, then quickly moved on, already grooming her replacement. William Desmond Taylor, shot and silenced. William Desmond Taylor was a respected director, admired for his talent and charm. But his life ended in chilling mystery, found shot in his home in 1922. Before police could arrive, Hollywood insiders swept through the crime scene, removing anything that could spark scandal. Suspects included actresses and studio fixers, but no one was ever charged. His death became a cold case, buried under studio politics. Taylor died surrounded by secrets, and Hollywood made sure most of them were never uncovered. Clara Bow, the it girl who lost everything. Clara Bow defined 1920s Hollywood, the flapper, the rebel, the girl everyone wanted. But behind the fame was a childhood of trauma, mental illness, and constant exploitation. Gossip columns tore her apart, studios abandoned her, and scandals swallowed her career. She vanished from the spotlight, retreating to a Nevada ranch where she lived out her final years in isolation. When Clara died at 60, most had already forgotten her name. The industry that once worshipped her didn't even look back. George Sanders, the cynical exit of a sophisticated villain. George Sanders was the voice of elegance and arrogance, an Oscar-winning actor known for his razor-sharp wit. But behind the smooth facade was a man growing tired of life itself. Deafness, failing health, and personal losses stripped away his identity. In 1972, he checked into a Spanish hotel, took a fatal dose of pills, and left a note, "Dear world, I am leaving because I am bored." The curtain closed not with drama, but with quiet, calculated despair. Olive Thomas died alone in a Paris hotel. Olive Thomas was a Ziegfeld star turned silent film darling, married into Hollywood royalty. But behind the glamorous image was a toxic marriage and growing emotional turmoil. During a troubled trip to Paris with her husband, she ingested a lethal dose of mercury bichloride. Whether by accident or something darker, no one knows. She died in a foreign hospital, far from anyone who truly cared. At just 25, Olive's life ended quietly, becoming one of Hollywood's first major scandals. John Barrymore, genius turned into a punchline. John Barrymore was once hailed as the greatest actor of his generation, handsome, commanding, unforgettable. But decades of alcoholism and personal chaos eroded his talent and reputation. Once a Shakespearean giant, he ended up performing in cheap comedies that mocked his former greatness. As his health failed, so did his finances. He died in a hospital bed in 1942, broke and alone. Hollywood mourned him briefly, but the man who once defined American theater was already a fading memory. Gail Russell, haunted beauty who drank herself away. Gail Russell's haunting eyes and delicate presence made her a perfect fit for Hollywood's ghostly romances, but her real fear was the camera itself. Crippling stage fright led to drinking, and drinking led to a slow, tragic decline. Studios gave up on her. Friends vanished. She spent her final years in a small apartment, surviving on odd jobs and fading memories. In 1961, she died alone at 36, choking during an alcohol-related incident. No spotlight, no audience, just silence. Rudolph Valentino, the lonely death of Hollywood's greatest lover. Rudolph Valentino was the ultimate screen heartthrob, adored by millions, envied by men. But fame couldn't shield him from pain. Struggling with financial troubles, failing health, and relentless public attacks, he collapsed in New York at just 31. He died days later from a ruptured ulcer, surrounded not by loved ones, but by curious reporters and strangers. The hysteria at his funeral was global, but in his final moments, the man who embodied romance died without love, comfort, or peace. Susan Peters, promising star paralyzed by tragedy. Susan Peters was a rising star with talent, charm, and an Oscar nomination to her name. But a freak hunting accident shattered her spine, ending her career overnight. Determined to keep acting, she tried roles from a wheelchair, but Hollywood wasn't ready for that. Her marriage collapsed, roles dried up, and depression took hold. By 31, Susan had wasted away from illness and heartbreak. The actress who once captivated audiences died alone, quietly, and long before her time. Montgomery Clift, destroyed by pain, died in silence. Montgomery Clift was once the future of acting, intense, brooding, unforgettable. But a devastating car crash left his face disfigured and his spirit shattered. He kept working, but something had changed. He hid from the world, numbing his pain with alcohol and pills. Once celebrated, now avoided, he became a ghost in his own life. In 1966, he died of a heart attack at 45, alone in his apartment. The man who redefined Hollywood vanished without fanfare. Marie McDonald, the body beautiful with a shattered mind. Marie McDonald was known more for her figure than her films, a glamorous pin-up dubbed The Body. But behind that image was a woman spiraling into paranoia, addiction, and delusion. She claimed to be kidnapped, suffered mental breakdowns, and was in and out of hospitals. By the mid-1960s, her career was over, her beauty fading, and her mind unraveling. In 1965, she was found dead at 42, overdosed and utterly alone. A life built on appearance, destroyed by everything beneath it. Peg Entwistle, the girl who jumped from the Hollywoodland sign. Peg Entwistle came to Hollywood with Broadway acclaim and real talent. But after her big film debut was butchered in the editing room, her contract wasn't renewed. In a city obsessed with what's next, Peg became invisible overnight. On September 16, 1932, she climbed the Hollywoodland sign and jumped from the letter H. Days later, a role offer arrived, too late. Her death became a symbol of broken dreams, but few knew just how close she'd come to a comeback. Errol Flynn, swashbuckler who aged into isolation. Errol Flynn was Hollywood's ultimate adventurer, charming, reckless, larger than life. But the drinking, scandals, and lawsuits eventually caught up with him. His good looks faded, roles dried up, and debts piled high. By the late 1950s, he was a bloated shadow of his former self, clinging to low-budget gigs. In 1959, Flynn died of a heart attack at 50 in a Vancouver apartment, far from the limelight, far from his glory days. The hero of the screen died forgotten. Dorothy Dandridge, a groundbreaking star Hollywood forgot. Dorothy Dandridge shattered barriers as the first black woman nominated for a Best Actress Oscar. But after that triumph, Hollywood slammed the door shut. Roles dried up, finances crumbled, and she was left caring for a disabled child alone. Trapped between racism and rejection, Dorothy struggled with depression and mounting debt. In 1965, she was found dead in her apartment at just 42. The trailblazer who once made history died quietly, sidelined by the very system she fought to enter. Wallace Reid, controlled through addiction. Wallace Reid was the perfect leading man, handsome, charming, a guaranteed box office draw. But after an on-set injury, he was prescribed morphine to keep working. Studios saw his addiction not as a problem, but as a way to control him. They fed his dependency to keep production rolling. By 31, his body gave out. He died in a sanitarium, used up and tossed aside. The golden boy of early cinema was destroyed by the very machine he helped build. Lana Turner, the sweater girl's quiet, lonely exit. Lana Turner had it all: fame, beauty, scandal, and a career that spanned decades. But as youth faded, so did Hollywood's interest. Her final years were marked by health problems, financial strain, and silence from the industry she once dominated. She lived alone in a quiet condominium, rarely seen, rarely remembered. When she died in 1995 at 74, it barely made headlines. The woman who once stopped traffic with a glance left the world with barely a whisper. Frances Farmer, the rebel Hollywood tried to break. Frances Farmer was brilliant, bold, and unafraid to challenge Hollywood's hypocrisy. But her defiance came at a price. Labeled difficult, she was institutionalized for mental illness and subjected to brutal treatments, including a rumored lobotomy. Her spirit was shattered behind hospital walls. Though she later resurfaced, the fire was gone. She spent her final years far from fame, working ordinary jobs in obscurity. When she died at 56, the system that crushed her barely acknowledged her passing. Alan Ladd, strong on screen, broken behind the scenes. Alan Ladd was the classic Hollywood tough guy, quiet, stoic, unshakable. But off-screen, he battled lifelong insecurity about his height, deep depression, and alcohol dependence. As his star faded and roles disappeared, so did his grip on stability. In 1964, he was found unconscious in his Palm Springs home, dead from a mix of alcohol and sedatives. He was just 50. The man who played heroes in the spotlight spent his final moments in silence, with no one there to save him. Barbara La Marr, too beautiful to live. Barbara La Marr was called The Girl Who Is Too Beautiful, a title that proved eerily prophetic. Her stunning looks made her a silent film sensation, but her wild lifestyle burned fast. She barely slept, lived on pills, and partied relentlessly while juggling multiple film shoots. By 29, her body gave out. Kidney failure ended her life on a film set. No family surrounded her. No friends visited. The beauty who once lit up screens died exhausted, alone, and tragically young. Carole Landis, love, rejection, and a lonely ending. Carole Landis was a radiant star and beloved World War II pinup, adored by troops and audiences alike. But her personal life was filled with heartbreak, especially her doomed affair with married actor Rex Harrison. When he refused to leave his wife, Carole's world collapsed. She took her own life in 1948, leaving behind a note and a dinner table set for two. Harrison stayed silent. Carole, just 29, died not from scandal, but from love that never loved her back. Jeanne Eagels, Broadway legend, Hollywood afterthought. Jeanne Eagels lit up the stage with raw talent that critics called unmatched. Her move to Hollywood promised a new chapter, but instead, it marked her unraveling. Sensitive, intense, and plagued by addiction, Jeanne clashed with studios that valued obedience over brilliance. Labeled unreliable, she was blacklisted and alone. In 1929, at just 35, she was found dead in her apartment. No applause, no headlines. The woman once hailed as a theatrical genius became just another forgotten name in Hollywood's discard pile. Bobby Driscoll, Disney's lost boy. Bobby Driscoll was the golden child of Disney, the voice of Peter Pan and the face of youthful innocence. But when puberty hit, Hollywood turned its back. His contract was dropped, roles disappeared, and he spiraled into addiction and homelessness. By 31, Bobby was found dead in an abandoned New York building. No ID, no funeral. He was buried in a pauper's grave. The boy who once flew across screens died with no one even realizing he was gone. Veronica Lake, from icon to cocktail waitress. Veronica Lake was once the definition of Hollywood glamour, her peekaboo hairstyle a national craze. But fame faded fast. Typecast, battling alcoholism, and difficult on set, she became unemployable. By the 1950s, she was working as a cocktail waitress, unrecognizable to the very fans who once idolized her. She moved from rundown apartment to apartment, health crumbling along with her legacy. In 1973, she died at just 50. The star who once lit up the screen faded out in near total darkness. Inger Stevens, smile that hid something darker. Inger Stevens was the picture of 1960s elegance, graceful, talented, and constantly working. But behind her polished image was a storm of loneliness and unresolved trauma. Abandoned as a child and scarred by broken relationships, she battled depression in silence. In 1970, she was found dead in her Hollywood Hills home at just 35. Friends were shocked. No one saw it coming. The actress who seemed to have everything was quietly consumed by the one thing Hollywood never addressed: inner pain. Mabel Normand, the laughing girl the world forgot. Mabel Normand was once the queen of silent film comedy, charming, fearless, and wildly popular. But scandal clung to her, even though she was never charged in any wrongdoing. Hollywood distanced itself. Her health declined, addiction took hold, and the offers vanished. She died of tuberculosis in 1930 at just 37, tucked away in a sanitarium. The woman who made millions laugh was buried quietly, her contributions to film history overshadowed by whispers and shame. Hollywood moved on without looking back. Alma Rubens, beauty destroyed by vices and scandal. Alma Rubens was once one of the most photographed women in America, a silent film beauty with tragic, ethereal charm. But behind the camera, her life was unraveling. Addiction, toxic relationships, and financial ruin destroyed her reputation. Once courted by producers, she became unemployable and invisible. In 1931, she died in a Los Angeles hospital at just 33. Broke, abandoned, and forgotten, Alma's final years were a far cry from the red carpets and adoring flashes that once defined her. John Gilbert, romantic icon who died of a broken heart. John Gilbert was Hollywood's great lover, a silent-era superstar whose face alone sold tickets. But when sound arrived, studio executives spread false rumors that his voice was unsuitable, sabotaging his career to void his expensive contract. The public believed it. Roles vanished. His confidence crumbled. By 38, he was a recluse, numbing the pain with alcohol. In 1936, he died of a heart attack. But those who knew him said the cause was simpler. He died of heartbreak and betrayal. Lupe Vélez, the tragic end of the Mexican Spitfire. Lupe Vélez was bold, fiery, unforgettable, the Mexican Spitfire who lit up the screen. But behind the laughter was a woman battling heartbreak, fading fame, and an unwanted pregnancy. With no support and fearing scandal, she planned a glamorous exit. But reality was messier. In 1944, Lupe took her own life, but complications made her final moments painful and humiliating. Her death was mocked by tabloids. The vibrant star who once captivated Hollywood was reduced to a cautionary headline. Marie Prevost starved in silence while her dog waited. Marie Prevost was once Hollywood royalty, funny, beautiful, and beloved. But when the talkies arrived, weight gain and age made her expendable. Offers stopped. Friends vanished. She spiraled into alcoholism, desperate for a comeback that never came. In 1937, she died alone in her apartment, undiscovered for days. Her loyal dachshund stayed by her side, trying in vain to wake her. The tragedy wasn't just her death, it was how completely Hollywood forgot she ever lived. This wasn't just tragedy, it was a pattern. Golden Age Hollywood promised fame but delivered control. Stars were built, used, and discarded when they stopped being profitable. Loyalty meant nothing. Once the cameras stopped rolling, so did the care. These weren't isolated stories. They were the system working exactly as designed. These stars gave everything to entertain us, but were left with nothing when it mattered most. Behind the glamour was silence, abandonment, and pain. Their stories aren't just sad, they're warnings. In remembering them, we honor more than talent. We acknowledge the human cost of chasing dreams in a ruthless system.